May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. One of my old standing clergy jokes goes like this. Well, it's against my religion to work on Sundays, but they expect me to show up and preach anyway. This whole question about what it's appropriate to do on the Sabbath. Now, a whole different question about when the Sabbath is. The Sabbath was Friday at sundown until Saturday at sundown, until Constantine changed things. But that whole question of what to do when you are declaring a Sabbath. What's appropriate? Can this be the clergy's Sabbath day? Can it be the organist's Sabbath day? I got a Sabbath moment earlier on during the prelude as I was able to sit and close my eyes and let Nancy work. And take in the beauty and that connectedness with God that comes through music. But are Sabbath moments enough? You know, I've had a long history of struggling with the Sabbath. I was waitress for a long time. And for quite a bit of that, I was waitress at one of the most fabulous Sunday brunch locations in town. So, of course, I worked on Sundays. And that whole question of how do we honor the Sabbath was a real difficult one for me at that point because, well, at about 11:45, the God Squad came. That's what the rest of the servers called him. It was this crew from this one church who would just get out of church and just come, and they just come in mass in a hurry, trying to get in front of the people from the other church down the road that evidently prayed a little bit longer or something. So, but this first crew, they had problems figuring out what Sabbath was about. It would inevitably, every Sunday, one of them would comment to one of the servers, scolding the server for working on the Sabbath, on Sunday. Now, I had a few things in my bag at that point even that I could have answered with, except that I was the server, and you don't have that option. You know, I could have answered him with the placing of the Sabbath. It shows up in the Ten Commandments. It's the fourth commandment, by the way. It's not 9 commandments and one good suggestion. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. You, your son or your daughter, your male or female slave or server, your livestock or the alien resident in your towns. You know, I could quote the commandment to them and say, what are you doing to honor the Sabbath in sitting at my table and requiring me to work? How do we honor the Sabbath? This passage from Exodus places it in the context of creation. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. This whole piece of Sabbath being part of the absolute interweavings of creation and of our Creator. So here I am doing this slightly uncomfortable sermon defending Sabbath keeping. After we just had this gospel reading where Jesus is sort of accused of not keeping Sabbath. But he does. It is not just the God Squad at a brunch who mistake what Sabbath is about. Anytime we set up structures to help us figure out how to do something, we have that tendency, and they had it then in Jesus' day too, to let the structures become what it's about. And to let it be about me and making sure that I've got it all right with God and that person over there obviously doesn't. It's but that makes me even better. We have these tendencies that have always been there and that we always seem to go to. But that doesn't mean we throw out Sabbath keeping. Jesus, and everybody else there too, is very aware of the second place where the Ten Commandments are listed, that doesn't reference creation at all. The first part of that in Deuteronomy, where the Ten Commandments are listed on the obey the Sabbath, observe the Sabbath day, keep it holy, and you and your servants and your oxen and your livestock and your resident aliens, that all part's the same. But then it's sort of the why clause is very different. Not for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, but in Deuteronomy it says, remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. You have been liberated. Can you imagine what good news that was to those who had been enslaved, who had no choice but to work every day? And remember, everyone needs this time, weekly, this going deeper into that relationship with God, with each other, with this world. And liberation is an okay thing to do on the Sabbath. Because there she is. 18 years she has been so bent over she cannot straighten up. And I tell you, even when you're sitting down, it's pretty impossible to look you in the face. She has been cut off from that connectedness. She has been limited. And there in the synagogue, Jesus sees her. She's with the women. And he calls her over. And he straightens her. He releases her. He frees her. And she opens her mouth and praises God right there in the synagogue. And all of our structures are out of place. We can't have this. This is someone who's trying to do what's right, trying to honor the Sabbath. And it seems, this is Jesus' work. We have 6 days that this can happen in. It's okay to be cured. But not on the Sabbath. What is all right for Sabbath? I know in my own life, this is a challenge. I got up this morning, finished working on a sermon. Okay, is this Sabbath time for me? And I've always said, no, Monday is my Sabbath. And I'm so bad about keeping it. It's like in my life there are 9 commandments and 1 good suggestion, and every now and then I might pay attention to that suggestion for a little bit. Sabbath is vital. It is not just a good suggestion. It is commanded by our God for our good and the good of this world. I tell you, I think marching on Washington is a good Sabbath activity on this 50th anniversary. I got up this morning and I saw a petition about voting rights that Gene Shaheen had put out to restore voting. I think that's a good Sabbath activity. I think work that isn't my job, but that honors my relationship with God, my relationship with my family, my relationship with this world, opens my heart and my soul into new ways of seeing what God is about in this world. A creator who loves it, a liberator who calls people forth, sets them free. And we do our own souls a disservice and a danger by ignoring Sabbath. I need to not turn my computer on Mondays when I'm doing my Sabbath and not check my email. That throws me immediately into connectedness with my work. I need to let your messages on my answering machine go unanswered until Tuesday unless somebody's died, okay? But, I need to spend time with my relationship with God that you're not a part of. Or it's not my relationship with God. So that the rest of my work days, 6 days I have to work, I get to do that in a better way, in a healthier way. My eyes could be opened so differently if I would allow not just an hour for Sabbath, not just a morning, but 24 hours from sunset to sunset. But I don't have time. But the world needs me so much. I'm indispensable. No, I'm not. And not honoring Sabbath in my own life allows me to continue to self-delude myself, to think that I am indispensable. Only God is at the heart of it all. So my challenge to myself and to you is to take this fourth commandment seriously. Sabbath time. True Sabbath time. Weekly. Now, our world is not structured that we can all take Sabbath time on the same day. And my husband, his days off are Thursday and Friday. One of those days needs to be Sabbath time for him. It's not going to be Saturday or Sunday. I'm going to continue to show up on Sunday morning and preach here. My Sabbath time needs to be something other than Sunday. Yours could be Sunday. As you gather to reconnect with God as community here, and then reconnect with the world. In what ways does God open your eyes and your heart in Sabbath awareness of a Creator who loved us so much? He says, yeah, don't forget this. A liberator who has freed us from the bondage of sin and the ways that we have been held back in our lives. Do not neglect the importance of Sabbath. Don't use the gospel today to say, oh yeah, well, Jesus doesn't bother with Sabbath. Yes, he does. He's there in the synagogue with his eyes open to God's love for all. May we each find our own Sabbath time, that our eyes might be open to the love that God has for us, the love that God has for this world. And if you honor that Sabbath every week, I can promise you, your life will be transformed. Nothing will be the same.